A world with tough bosses, powerful weapons, magic spells, and a lot of exploring too. Can I make my way through the lands between? Can I run the gauntlet of bosses and beat the game? How many times will I die? To get 100%, I will need to defeat bosses, complete the game 3 different times, and of course, collect all 42 achievements along the way. This is playing 100% of Elden Ring.
Tell a story. The great Elden Ring was shattered. In our home, across the fog, the lands between. Now, Queen Marika the Eternal is nowhere to be found. And in the night of the Black Knives, Godwyn the Golden was first to perish. Soon, Marika's offspring, demigods all, claimed the shards of the Elden Ring. The mad taint of their newfound strength triggered the shattering. A war from which no lord arose. A war leading to abandonment by the greater will. Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Hoarah, chieftain of the Badlands, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask. Fear, the deathbed companion, the loathsome Dung-Eater, and Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing. And one other, whom grace would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord.
I started my journey by creating my Tarnished, a man worthy of sitting upon the throne and becoming the Elden Lord. God, it's like looking in a mirror. Then I went to fight my first boss encounter of the game, and I was confident that I would hold my own. And I did not. Waking up in a cave, I learned the controls as I took out my anger on the locals. And I had a little tussle with the Soldier of God himself, Rick. Finally freeing myself and emerging from the cave, I talked to my first NPC, Vare the White Mask, who immediately told me I have no maidens.
However, You are maidenless.
I stopped talking to him because he was hurting my feelings, and I didn't have time for that. I was on my quest to become the Elden Lord. I spent several hours exploring the landscape, fighting any enemy that appeared, and defeating bosses. I also had a talk with my new guide, Melina.
I am Melina. I offer you an accord.
She told me she will aid in my journey as long as I take her to the foot of the Erdtree. Needing friends and wanting to prove Vare wrong, I accepted her accord. And she gave me a spectral horse named Torrent to travel with. I then went off to explore Caelid, where I found interesting areas and fought new and very frustrating enemies that I was definitely far too low level for. Looking at you, Commander O'Neill. Looking at you. Ignoring my stupidity for a second, I made it to the smoldering church. And after fighting a sword-swinging, tarnish-eating lady, I rested at a site of grace, and had a chat with Melina.
Forgive me. I've been testing you.
She invited me to the Round Table Hold to meet the other tarnished champions. Upon arriving at the Round Table to talk to NPCs and upgrade my items, I was given the first achievement of the run. I left the hold and continued collecting the items I needed for my build, which was built around the Stormblade Ash of War. You will see all of this was a waste of time because I will change the build after a particular boss that is coming later. Exploring my way around the Weeping Peninsula, I met Irina, who told me to deliver a letter to her father in Castle Morn. This led me to my first major side boss, the Leonine Misbegotten. This fight was pretty straightforward. And by straightforward, I mean I died to him. Twice. I'd rather not talk about it. But I was still learning the fight, and I soon came out on top over the little lion fella. Which gave me the second achievement of the run, and my first legendary weapon. This will be important later, but just keep it in mind. After that, I felt ready to finally throw hands with Market the Fell Omen. Fighting Market made me see the problems with my build. I realized, good as it was, it didn't fit my playstyle. This marked the beginning of me rethinking the build, but I actually won't redo it until later.
Put these foolish ambitions to rest.
A few tries later, I finally got the best of Market, and upon his defeat, I pocketed yet another achievement. After defeating him, I set out to explore the castle, but I was reminded of how much I dislike this area. Between these stupid birds and the Storm Knights, they made sure to stomp out any joy for me before the next fight.
Mighty dragon, thou'rt a true-born heir. Lend me thy strength, O kindred. Deliver me unto greater heights. Well. A lowly tarnished. Playing as a lord. I command thee, kneel! I am the lord of all that is golden.
Other than having one of the coolest intro cinematics in the game, Godric the Grafted in the lore is described as the weakest demigod. And yeah, that checks out, as I made quick work of the Lord of Gold.
I am the lord of all that is golden. And one day, we'll return together to our home, bathed in rays
After wiping the floor with Godric, I decided to once again return to my exploring. But after a while, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I made my way to the academy to have some words with the Red Wolf and Queen Rennala. Not before equipping armor worthy of a knight like myself. I have to look the part, you know? I made my way through the lake, dodging a sleeping dragon and grabbing the glintstone key. I then leaped over some soldiers who were bad at their job, got jumped by some puppets in a church, and had my health and mana sucked from me by a lanky dude and some dogs in a graveyard. I finally pushed my way past all the nerds and the constantly flying spells in the academy, and put the hurt on the sword-wielding dog. Gathering the achievement given to me at his defeat, I continued my warpath towards Rennala. Not before knocking some sense into Moongrim. Try parrying wind, idiot. Rennala's first phase is the easiest one in all of Elden Ring, but at this point I was already losing faith in my build, and that wasn't helped after nearly getting one-shot by a giant being summoned on my head during her second phase. She turned into a moon and summoned a dragon, but it was only a matter of time.
Old sworn dragon.
And as I landed the last hit, I managed to defeat Rennala on my first go, collecting her 2 achievements. At this point, I was feeling happy, but those feelings wouldn't last long. Oh no, they would not. I continued my journey and made my way to the Carrion Manor, where I would seemingly meet my match in Royal Knight Loretta. After getting destroyed several times, I decided then and there it was time for a change. I reallocated my stats, upgraded my new weapon, acquired my spells, and came back to Loretta with a vengeance. And it went perfectly. "12 deaths later, I finally killed Loretta, and collected her achievement in pure defeat even though I defeated her. I waited a day to play again, and set my sights on Radahn. I had time to cool off from my encounter with Loretta, and I was ready for another challenge. I ran my way to Redmane Castle, fought my way to the Champion Gathering, and joined the festival. As I charged my way towards the General, I summoned NPCs as reinforcements, and died. Several times. But I wasn't going to let that get to me. I was still trying my new build and just needed to time my attacks better. Giving the fight one more go, I defeated Radahn and collected his achievement, while celebrating with my new fellow champions. It had to be done, okay? Listen, I needed the talisman, and I wasn't going to wait.
How could this? Was my whole existence just...
Moving on. With Radahn defeated, the city of Nokron was revealed, and I made my way below the earth to continue my journey. I jumped from rooftop to rooftop, taking down the little slime dudes as I made my way to the city. My first encounter in this new region was the Mimic tier boss. Equipping down into my birthday suit, the fight turns short and simple, as the boss becomes very easy to defeat. A shame, he was a good-looking chap. I then made my way to the Sephra River, to have my go at the ancestral spirits. I lit the unlit beacons in the surrounding area, and upon getting a message that the fight was ready, I hopped onto Torrent and hurried my way to the spirit's remains. Touching the remains teleported me to the boss door, and this will forever be my favorite boss battle in the game. Between the visuals and the music, it cannot be compared in my opinion. I summoned my wolves to distract the poor beast, and sent a plethora of spells at its head. Unfortunately, as much as I enjoyed the fight, it had to come to an end, and soon the ancestral spirit was slain. Rest well, little buddy. With no time to spare, I wiped my eyes and went to fight his big brother, the royal ancestral spirit. Once again, I lit the beacons and touched the remains. This fight went exactly the same as the previous, with the only difference being that the royal spirit had a moment to self-heal before being swiftly defeated. At this point, I was on a roll. I was defeating bosses faster and more efficiently than I was with my other build. I was on Cloud 9. So I made my way down to the Ansel River to tick off a couple of other bosses. The first of which was the Dragonkin Soldier, who, just like the ancestral spirits, was defeated with ease. The same cannot be said about the next boss, Estelle, natural born of the void. This anal bead from hell turned out to be a worthy foe, and tested the limits of my new build, but my first try led to a near victory, so I was hopeful. After a few attempts and using my new favorite spell, Night Comet, I took down Estelle and had yet another achievement under my belt. Without a moment to spare, I trudged my way to the Shaded Castle to take on the next boss on my list, Elemer of the Briar. Shifting through the sludge that surrounds the castle, I made my way to the door that separated me and Elemer. At this point, you keen-eyed viewers might notice I haven't activated any Great Runes, which might have helped against Elemer killing me in 2 hits. I, however, did not learn this lesson for the remainder of this fight. But, through sheer force of will, or just unbridled stupidity, I pushed on and beat Elemer, taking his achievement in tow. I chose to take the fight to another side boss before moving on to tougher ones. My sights were on Magma Worm Makar. After fighting bats and being poisoned, I came face to face with the Magma Worm. It took me longer to get here than it was to beat him. After that hard-fought battle, I decided it was time to face the boss I was trying to avoid. Or should I say bosses? The Gargoyles. Having remembered that activating Great Runes was a thing in this game, I activated Radons and dragged my feet to the Gargoyle fight, ready to pull my hair out and spend hours fighting them. I took a deep breath and walked into the arena, and I beat them my first go. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda just sat there in bewilderment for several minutes after that fight. After snapping out of my confusion, I traveled to the Volcano Manor, where 2 achievements sat ready for the taking. The first of which was the Godskin Noble. I fought my way through snake men, crazy crawling things, and poison exploding nobles with a sleep pot in hand, ready to deliver this man to the afterlife with haste. I walked through those doors and put him to sleep. As he slumbered, I prepared his execution with a glint in my eye and pure joy running through my heart. As I saw his health get stripped away like my sanity fighting Loretta, I smiled with glee. And when he died, Anyway, I grabbed his achievement and pushed forward to the main boss of the area, Crater Rykard.
with Remedy. Together we will devour the very god.
And this fight was simple enough. Putting on a talisman that boosted my fire resistance, I picked up the special weapon and got up close and personal with Rykard. After several minutes of spamming the weapon's special attack and laying into this writhing mass of flesh, he too quickly joined the list. I then spent some time cleaning up some side bosses. Fia's champions and the Lich Dragon Fortisax didn't even put up much of a fight. And Mohg the Omen was also taken down. As I made my way into Lindell, I was feeling unstoppable, as if nothing could kill me. I walked into the first Godfrey fight with my chest puffed out, and I took down the first Elden Lord with ease. Turns out all it takes to take down the first Elden Lord was just a couple of rocks. Running off of that momentum, I rushed into the next fight, against a very familiar face.
Graceless, tarnished. What is thy business with these thrones? Ah, Godric the Golden. The twin prodigies, Miquella and Malenia. General Radahn, Praetor Rykard, Luna Princess Ranni, willful traitors, all. Thy kind are all of a piece. Pillagers, emboldened by the flame of ambition. Have it writ upon thy meager grave. Felled thy king Morgott, last of all kings.
Morgott talked a lot of trash, but just like the other bosses before him, I took him down in one sitting. It was now off to the mountaintops of the Giants. As I said before, I'm feeling unstoppable. But just like Icarus, I too will fly too close to the sun, and I will feel its burn. Commander Nile humbled me so fast, he left a red footprint on my rear. Him and his knights kicked my ass several times. I was having flashbacks to Loretta. But I was determined not to have another Loretta situation, and after a grueling fight with some close calls, I defeated Commander Nile. Collecting the other half of the secret medallion, I decided that my next venture will be towards the Haligtree. Around this time, I got my main weapon fully upgraded, using an ancient smithing stone dropped by an invader. Going into the Haligtree, I was hopefully optimistic, and this was a good mindset going into the next fight with. It was round 2 with Royal Knight Loretta, and I was dead set on not letting her get the best of me this time. This fight took a couple of tries, but I had learned and I was determined. Unlike her earlier counterpart, I managed to defeat her in only a few attempts. She fought well, and in the end, I had gained some respect from my rival. I'm sure you all know what fight was next. The titled hardest boss in the game, the one that has killed thousands of players.
I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella.
Let me tell you, I had a hard time with this boss. I was messing up again and again, dodging too early, dodging too late, and not backing up when she did her special attack.
I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella.
I eventually admitted defeat and decided to summon others to help. And well, this still proved to be difficult as some of the backup was much less helpful than others. But after several attempts, the Blade of Miquella was finally defeated.
Your strength. Extraordinary. The mark. The true Lord.
For some reason, dying to Malenia wasn't enough mental strain for me, because after defeating her, I picked up and went off to fight the Lord of Blood himself. To get to Mohg's palace is actually quite simple. It involves doing Vari's small quest line. I invaded the 3 different players and soaked a cloth in the blood of a finger maiden. Taking the elevator up to Mohg's boss store, I was ready to take him on, and it went as well as you'd expect. Several defeats and summoning other players later, Mohg joined the list of defeated bosses. With all the big side bosses out of the way, it was time to go back to the mountaintops of the giants and fight the giant. And this fight was much simpler than I had expected. I kind of felt bad for the big guy as I poked his leg and gave him frostbite. But I couldn't feel bad for too long. I grabbed the Fire Giant's achievement and had a little nap, as Melina set the Erd Tree ablaze, giving me yet another achievement. I awoke in the crumbling Far Missoula, a floating place seemingly out of time. Killing a dragon and dodging some knights and beastmen, I parkoured my way to fight the ultimate duo. And, just like my fight with the Godskin Noble, I went into the Godskin duo fight with no fear and a fistful of NyQuil. Quickly dispatching them as they slept and collecting their achievement, I continued on my way to fight Malekith, dodging lightning and these stupid birds yet again. And this fight took a bit. I had forgotten how to dodge several times during both phases, and that caused a lot of trouble.
I shall not part with it again.
But after some more attempts and summoning other players later, we finally managed to defeat him and I took his achievement.
Witness tarnished. Why cover destined death? To kill what?
We are quickly getting closer to the end with only a few bosses left, so before moving on, I decided it was time to collect all the collectible achievements. So I headed out, collecting all the legendary spells, spirit ashes, armaments, and talismans. After that was all done, there was no more room to procrastinate. It was time to handle the final 3 bosses. Oh, and Gideon as well, I guess. The first boss up was Hoarah, and let me tell you, this fight was brutal. And my build was definitely struggling with this fight. But after tweaking my equipment and calling upon an old defeated boss to help, Hoarah was finally defeated.
Brave, tarnished.
Though barely. It was finally time to walk through the light under the Erd Tree, and come face to face with Radagon. Much like the previous bosses, apart from Gideon, Radagon was giving me trouble. I once again admitted defeat and called in some backup, and Radagon was defeated, giving us the second phase of the fight. The Elden Beast, a beautiful fight, one of my favorite endgame bosses in any Souls-like. This fight was difficult, but mainly because of the constant running around that the boss arena requires. At least it did require that when I fought the Elden Beast. Thanks, FromSoft. Thanks. Despite me having to put my steps in, we got the beast low, and I got the last hit in, defeating the final boss and shepherding me into the endings. I'm sure at this point you all might have noticed I've talked about all of the bosses except for one, Dragon Lord Placidusax. At this point, I was so caught up on fighting the other bosses, I had completely forgotten about him. I luckily remembered him before doing any of the endings. So, I raced back to the crumbling farm Azula. I laid down near the storm, and entered the boss arena. And boy was this fight fun. I hated every second of it, as fighting this boss made me want to pull my teeth out. After dozens of tries, some that came closer than others, I finally managed to defeat him and was able to continue on finishing the game. Elden Ring has 3 different endings. The first ending I got was by mending the Elden Ring and sitting upon the throne, giving me the Elden Lord achievement. The next ending involves completing Ranni's questline. Ranni's quest had me explore an underground part of the game, fight a spirit, defeat Estelle, marry her, and finally use her summon sign at the end. Doing all of this gave me the Age of Stars ending. The final ending involves delving deep below Lindell, into the Forsaken Depths, to interact with the 3 fingers. They singed their mark onto my body, and after defeating Radagon, I was given only one option: to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame. Doing so gave me the achievement of the same name. As I embraced madness, I also embraced the final 2 achievements of the game, and thus finished my quest to play 100% of Elden Ring. Thank you all for watching, and until we quest again.